Afternoon, folks. As you all may know, Tony Bobulinski was on the stand today before the House hearing, and they were discussing a little bit about the Biden impeachment. But more than that, they were discussing the crimes that Bobulinski knows for a fact that Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, the other Jim Biden, and some of the other people that were involved in this. We're talking about the Devin Archer types and so many more. Bobulinski, I believe, is the only honest person that actually ever worked with the Bidens. He actually, when he realized that he was working in the process of a bribe scheme, an international bribe scheme, he didn't want to have no part of it. So he started telling the FBI and keeping records and trying to find somebody that wanted to know the truth of the matter. Well, this was years ago when all this stuff went down. And as things go, the FBI, Department of Justice, still today has all this information on the Bidens and all the financial corruption, including influence peddling, that happened, but they are still continuing to cover it up. But thank God for people like Tony Bobulinski. The man is tried and true. To me, it seemed like he's the only person in the Biden circle of business associates that's actually telling the truth at this point. He doesn't sound like he's scared a bit. It sounds like he is willing to give it his all to try to save his country, even if it means telling the absolute truth in court, in Congress, wherever need be, against the corruption that went on before his very eyes. I'm talking about the Biden crime family. Now, I've got a couple of video clips here for you folks. There was some highlights, some spicy moments. You'll catch some of those on the local news, the little clips here and there. We had all the great ones up there just speaking today, Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert, Clay Higgins, several of them, Jim Jordan, Comer weighed in a little bit. And you know how it goes. You get 5 minutes to speak, and the Democrat gets 5 minutes to hate on Trump or lie. And it went on for 8 hours today, and 8 hours was almost unbearable. I listened to a good part of it. It was almost unbearable for the fact that in between trying to listen to the truth and understand what exactly happened, you have to put up with the 5 minutes of bullshit in between with these crazy Jamie Raskin type Democrats. Now I'm going to play you opening statement, a little bit of Matt Gaetz, and then how the closing statement went down, and pretty much everything in between, with the exception of a few highlights. That's how it went all day. So it'll basically give you a run through of what's exactly going on. Now, if you don't know, Tony Bobulinski is not just a whistleblower. He is somebody that is probably going to get prosecuted for this is all said and done. Because like Joe Biden said, nobody F's with a Biden. At this point in time, with the weaponized Department of Justice, it would not surprise me if they don't try to arrest Mr. Bobulinski over God knows what. Mark my words, it's probably coming because of the fact he is telling all about the Bidens, and we all know it's true. All right, folks, let's get into it.
Yet the same people preaching this mantra know better. They continue to lie directly to the American people without hesitation and remorse. Rep. Dan Goldman and Jamie Raskin, both lawyers, and Mr. Goldman, a former prosecutor with the SDNY from New York, will continue to lie today in this hearing and then go straight to the media to tell more lies. Hunter Biden's defense attorney, Abby Lowell, weaponizes letters to Congress to try to smear my name
Mr. Chairman.
Misstate the cold hard facts.
Mr. Chairman.
In an attempt to save his powerfully connected client and his father. I challenge Mr. Lowell to make those claims on national television so he can be held accountable for his lies. Prior to my successful business career, I was an officer in the United States Navy. At Navy's Elite Naval Nuclear Power Training Command, I later served as the command's chief technology officer.
Proceed. I apologize for the disruption from the...
Okay. Am I supposed to say it's my time, Mr. Raskin?
Yeah. But please, Mr. Bobulinski, please
Okay.
come to order. Mr. Bobulinski, please proceed.
Okay.
Please proceed. I apologize for the disruption from the minority.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Chairman, save his time, but he called members of this committee liars, and I just want to know whether the order and decorum requirements of House Rule 11 apply to witnesses appearing before the committee.
And this is how this thing got started. Jamie Raskin objecting to, wanting to take a vote on, trying to strike his words for calling these folks liars. Jamie Raskin is a liar. There's no contesting that. It's just the facts, folks. Now let me go ahead and get into a clip that Benny Johnson had, which was pretty much closing arguments of this thing, with a little bit of Matt Gaetz as well.
Recognizes Mr. Gates from Florida.
You're a serious business person, Mr. Bobulinski, right?
I am.
Unlike the convicted felon next to you, you've served in the military, right?
Correct.
You've done big deals,
Correct.
complicated deals, deals that involved foreign businesses, right?
Correct.
And so what I'm trying to figure out is when you came to realize that you showed up at the wrong party. Because you kind of strike me as a guy who showed up to do a legitimate business deal, and you ended up instead at a bribe. And so as you're looking at CEFC, as you're having this meeting with Joe Biden, as Hunter Biden is introducing you to his web of contacts, when did you go from serious businessman Tony Bobulinski working to make a buck in a capitalist system to a guy worried that you had been unwittingly ensnared into Hunter and Joe Biden's bribe operation with the Chinese Communist Party?
I appreciate the question. It wasn't an aha moment. It was more of a process. I am a serious businessman, demonstrated by the different deals I've done around the world and the success of them. But it started, remember, the Biden family wasn't my entry into this. James Gillier, who I'd known for over 10 years, who traveled the world doing business, kept trying to get me involved. I really had no interest. I sat down in the spring of 2017 to walk through things, and then I quickly put together two businesses, Sinohawk and Oneida. After the meetings in Los Angeles with Hunter and Joe Biden, it started to sort of, bells and whistles started to go off when Jim Biden used the term plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability is the first moment, straight from the lips of Jim Biden, right on the heels of your discussion with Joe Biden, where you start to think, this might not be legit.
Correct. And my lawyers at the time could attest to that, because I reached out to them saying, listen, I'm a former naval officer. I held a Q security clearance. I couldn't collect. Somebody couldn't take me to dinner for $50. This just does not make sense to me.
But you proceed, and then later this thing starts to get a lot uglier. What's the moment you go from, okay, your spidey senses are up, you're analyzing this, to now you know this is a crime that you are bearing witness to?
The end of July, when the Biden family put them right front and center in the middle of a $9 billion transaction between the Russian state-owned energy company Rosneft and CFC, a surrogate for the Chinese Communist Party.
And was there ever a time in the deals you were involved in where you started to see the money move around the legitimate business enterprise and toward the pockets of the Bidens?
Well, the challenge, Mr. Gates, with that is at the time they moved the money, right? You guys have the text messages where Hunter Biden shook down Director Zhang, but I was not aware of that. I spent a year asking questions of, this doesn't make sense to me. Where's the money? I stepped in and had lawyers work to dissolve the two entities. I didn't know till years later that they had defrauded me. They had gotten paid all this money and all this craziness. The amount of facts.
It just seems pretty simple. This is either a bribe or a business.
It was a bribe from the Chinese Communist Party.
And
I don't say that lightly. There's 1,200 pages, 8 days of testimony in the Southern District of New York. I encourage everyone watching me, hearing me say this. They're publicly available. Go read them. Our Department of Justice outlines in intimate detail the corruption and bribes that CFC was deploying to political officials all over the world.
It wasn't
so
just in
I'm
the
here
United
to
States.
believe that they did this in every other country, but with the Biden family, it was pristine. It was an actual clean business. That's absurd.
And you came to know that, and that's when you blew the whistle, right? That's when you started to get worried when you saw Joe Biden.
I stepped away from it. There's the whistleblowers. I can't give them kudos enough for the bravery and the risk they put their family in. They published stuff where I am voicing the concern of the Rosneft deal.
And you
directly to
animated
them.
your concerns when you saw that this wasn't just a corrupt bribe, a corrupt business deal happening to a guy who used to be vice president. When you see that Joe, everyone's made a big deal like you're a bad guy, that you showed up at the debate, or you're trying to give life to these facts that you've observed, that it's so bad that you did that during a political contest. But observing this, it kind of seems like it would be unpatriotic for you to stay quiet.
Of course.
And so, I mean, Joe Biden
I
running
agree.
for president clearly motivated the Chinese to consummate this bribe. Did it also motivate you?
Well, I didn't want to go public. I wanted to simply unload all the facts, personal experiences. It's funny, there's 18 people on this committee with law degrees, including, I think, Mr. Swalwell. Evidence, firsthand testimony, is the most powerful evidence you have. I've given it, Mr. Galanis has given it, along with a whole host of other witnesses. Then, on top of that, I have thousands of documents and pages of legals and stuff like that.
That's what's
I
interesting,
wanted
Mr.
to simply
Bobulinski.
give this information.
Yeah, but
Congressmen
that's the
and
thing.
senators.
No
and
one
let them
questioned
do their
any of
job.
your facts. No one brought a single piece of evidence that even for a moment discredited any of the truthful testimony that you've given us.
And that's the
Time
fact.
expired, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. That concludes our questioning. Again, want to thank the witnesses. We are going to close now, and I will yield to the ranking member for a brief closing statement.
Closing arguments, folks. A little bit of Jamie Ratskin rattling on, and then a little bit of a rebuttal from Comer.
Fraud, which was fascinating to me, given that his hero Donald Trump has just been convicted civilly of bank and insurance
Took like
fraud
10
in New York,
seconds.
In a civil case, and now owes, I think it gave more than $5 million to Donald Trump while he was president of the United States, in direct violation of the emoluments clause, which says that nobody in federal office shall accept a present, an emolument, which means a payment, an office or title of any kind whatever, from a king, a prince, or a foreign state. And we spent the day, again, jawboning about Hunter Biden, who has never held public office, and he's never done business with the government. And yet we have right in front of us, in front of our very eyes, mammoth corruption, unprecedented in U.S. history by Donald Trump as president. And
You notice this guy's got a smile on his face. Every time he lies, he smiles about it.
my friends don't say a single word about it, but he wants to lecture Mr. Parnas about the illegal donations he made on behalf of pro-Trump super PACs. I've noticed something interesting with the people who have finally disenthralled themselves and gotten out of the Trump cult, as Mr. Parnas puts it. People like Michael Cohen, Sarah Matthews, Cassidy Hutchinson, Alyssa Griffin. There's articles about them. There are dozens of those people, and I'd be fleeing for the exits now too. What's so fascinating to me about it is that they don't mind when these people lie for Donald Trump. Then when they get out and start telling the truth, that's when they call them liars for what they did when they worked for Donald Trump.
Really?
Mr. Parnas, they're not mad that you lied
Spin.
and went to prison for it and did your time. They're mad that you stopped lying for Donald Trump.
Absolutely, Congressman Raskin.
So when I was a state assistant attorney general, Mr. Chairman, I saw a judge on my very first day of work castigate a lawyer by saying, son, you forgot the very first rule of lawyering. When you go to court, you got to bring the evidence with you.
If Bobulinski's testimony, including several other people's testimony, emails, phone calls, text messages, audio recordings, suspicious activity reports, financial transactions, finding out who all the key players are, actual amounts of money, checks. The list goes on and on and on of the evidence that is out against the Bidens. And this guy sat here and still looks right in the camera with a big goofy clown smile on his face, Jamie Ratskin, and lies to the American public, hoping you'll believe it. He's trying out to be another Adam Schiff, and it's just not working for the American people. Most people, even if you're a crazy lefty Democrat, can see the lie this man is telling.
You forgot to bring the evidence. There's no evidence. Hundreds of thousands of pages of documents, dozens of hours of testimony, but not a shred of evidence of presidential wrongdoing, much less an impeachable offense by President Biden. And you're making not just the majority a laughingstock, the whole committee a laughingstock. So it's hurting us. My members are saying, when will they call off this nonsense? So here we are. Again, Mr. Parnas, I want to thank you. You have explained to America that the allegations at the very foundation of this inquiry were predicated on Russian propaganda and disinformation, just as they were at the start of the hit job that you and Rudy Giuliani were sent to do back in 2018 and 19. And I want to thank you for showing America what real intellectual honesty and personal honesty look like, and how you...
This guy should not be able to spout the words out of his mouth about intellectual integrity. This guy has no integrity about him at all. He lies for a living.
You can grow out of the deranged Trump syndrome that so many of our colleagues are still suffering from today. It's time to call this investigation for what it is, Mr. Chairman. It's not just an embarrassing failure and an historic failure at that, but it's an historic betrayal of democracy, freedom, and the rule of law as Vladimir Putin tramples the freedoms and the democracy of people in Ukraine. We should be spending our time standing up for democracy and not tarnishing it with spectacles like this.
Got to throw a little bit of Ukraine funding in there too, huh?
I yield back.
I should have brought my waiters from the farm. I want to thank our witnesses for being here today.
Because he's crying so many tears.
Mr. Galanis have delivered testimony in front of the American people directly implicating President Biden and his family's influence peddling schemes. Schemes that brought over $24 million into the Biden family and their business associates' pockets. For what? I never heard the minority say what they did or what business the Bidens were in. Mr. Bobulinski and Mr. Galanis have provided documents supporting these claims and provided hours of testimony to this committee. Mr. Bobulinski and Mr. Galanis have not changed their stories. Mr. Bobulinski and Mr. Galanis did not ask for this hearing, but they showed up for it because they have nothing to hide. I also invited Hunter Biden to this hearing, in part due to his own request that he be allowed to provide transparency and testimony before the American people. Or at least he did request this hearing, and then he sat for a deposition with the Oversight and Judiciary Committees. Now he's nowhere to be found. Mr. Bobulinski, Mr. Galanis, and others have implicated Joe Biden in the Biden family business. Hunter Biden denies his father's role in the Biden family business. This is a material discrepancy among witnesses of the highest order. I attempted to solve this problem by getting the witnesses in the same room together to straighten out any misunderstandings. It should be clear to the American people that Hunter Biden's word is as valuable as the fake services he was selling. And this committee will not play games or belittle the institution of Congress by allowing Hunter Biden to call the shots about who he testifies with or when he does it. At this point, the only person who can resolve this discrepancy about Joe Biden's participation in his family's influence peddling schemes is Joe Biden himself. As I said at the beginning of this hearing, Joe Biden was either used by his family over and over again and paraded in front of his business partners to rake in millions of dollars, or he knew exactly what he was doing to enrich his family. Joe Biden was either complicit or incompetent. And the American people deserve to know which one it is, which one it was. But neither is acceptable for the leader of the United States. I don't think anyone believes that this is acceptable behavior for the family of the President of the United States. Invite President Biden to the Oversight Committee to provide his testimony and explain why his family received tens of millions of dollars from foreign companies.
There it is.
Assistance. We need to hear from the President himself.
That's right.
And I assure the American people that they will be able to evaluate for themselves the President's honesty and fitness for the office he now holds.
Subpoena Joe Biden, what it's going to take, folks. Comer is already making arrangements to invite Joe Biden to the Congress. Joe Biden's not going to show. They're going to have to subpoena him. They're going to have to go through the whole process. But it's going to look bad on Biden if he can't come before Congress to answer questions. Either way, it's a lose-lose deal for Biden. We did get a little bit more exposure today. This was 8 hours long. There's plenty of clips of different people's monologues out there today, but more than anything, for a lot of people, this is just a way to get their voices out there as campaigning, as far as I'm concerned. It's a whole lot of theatrics as well, but at least there's a little bit of exposure, and Tony Bobulinski brought the exposure today. That's all I got for you. Everybody have a great day. Like, subscribe, and share. Devoted Patriots, over and out.